The most exciting time of the NHL schedule has arrived, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Monday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. All the top news from the weekend that you need brought together on today's episode. Let's get right to it. Thank you for joining us.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to your source for fantasy hockey news and degenerate gambling breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast alongside my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steel Roden. It's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. You can find us everywhere you find your favorite podcast, and that includes YouTube. So make sure you're out there, and we need that feedback, people. So don't slip or slack and hit us in the DMs and in the comments. And Steel, today, more of what our listeners who have been with us now for, you and I have been doing this almost a year and a half together. Shout out to all those supporters. More of the same, though. Everything that you need to know from the NHL that is fantasy worthy, but all the top stories. McDavid doing special things. Crosby in that 1,500 point club. Bruins tying a franchise and obviously league record with wins. And of course, big time bets. But why don't you take it away with where you want to start? I assume we're going with McDavid, but another special weekend in the NHL, and we only have 6 days left, my friend. 5 days. You know me with the numbers. Let's start this playoffs.
Left. Yeah, 5 days left in the regular season. Playoffs right around the corner. The matchups, every single matchup honestly looks like it's going to be incredible in the first round. So I'm very excited for the postseason. But Connor McDavid doing special things in the regular season right now. 151 points currently with 2 games remaining on the regular season. First player, though, since Mario Lemieux back in 1995 to put up 150 points in a season. Only the 6th player in NHL history to do so as well. So he's putting his name amongst the greats right now. And at 26 years old, entering his prime, he's only going to continue to get better and better. And just what he's been able to do the last month. He's on a 14-game point streak right now with 27 points in that time. 64 goals on the season. There's 2 games left. Wouldn't it be absolutely crazy if he goes out in the last 2 games and somehow scores 6 goals for 70 on the season? Might be a little bit hard because one of those games is against the Colorado Avalanche and the last one on the season against the San Jose Sharks. But it's absolutely incredible to see what Connor McDavid is able to do. And the fact that he's getting better and better every single year is absolutely fascinating as well. And just to put this, the cream of the crop on everything, if he gets just 2 more points, it puts him top 15 for most points ever in a season at all time of all seasons out of any NHL player. So again, putting his name amongst the greats already in his early career.
And I just have to we have to come on this episode and give Connor McDavid the credit because when you're throwing out names like Mario Lemieux and records being touched for the first time since the mid-90s, that's when you have to actually take a serious look at what are we really seeing in front of us, Steel. And I think, as you know, you're on the West Coast now, but a lot of East Coast fans, like, I don't think you're actually tapping into how good McDavid has been this season. And I understand also, Steel, because so many fans on the East Coast of Canada are so very loyal to the Habs, the Sens, and obviously the Leafs. So you don't really want to pay attention to what's going on with an Edmonton Oilers star. But oh boy, should you really, because now these numbers are starting to fall into place. And I wanted to just hit you with this because I was lucky enough to watch Mario Lemieux play live in his comeback season, 2 comeback seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins in Toronto. And he made a couple of plays, Steel, that really I had never seen from a player before, including catching a pass on one hand along the boards between the legs and feeding it out front for an assist with one hand on his stick. I've never seen things like that. So when McDavid's now in the mix with a player that I know for a fact I've seen never do things before, I just need to come on to this podcast and say, I think, Steel, he might even be getting better. So next year, if you have that first overall draft pick, just put your hands together and say thank you to the fantasy hockey gods, because Connor McDavid is, in my opinion, Steele, what, the next 7 or 8 seasons, the clear and away first overall draft pick in fantasy leagues?
Yeah, most likely so. And same goes for Leon Draisaitl in the top 3 as
Good
well. If they're
point.
going to be playing together for the next 7 to 8 years, those two pretty much go hand in hand. But at this point, I'm honestly not even surprised at what Connor McDavid is able to do. Whatever he is, whatever he does on the ice, it's obviously incredible. It's fantastic. The fans love it, but I'm not surprised because he's able to do that McJesus magic, pull out a rabbit from the hat and just blow by people, break ankles out there with his edge work and skating ability.
Yes.
It's honestly the most incredible player I've ever been able to witness, and for a lot of fans out there.
100%. And you just mentioned pulling magic out of the hat. Can we just talk about Sidney Crosby? You and I know we have to. No, look, we come on here and we have to talk about the top news in the league. We're not dedicated to any franchise. So obviously that has a lot to do over the last couple of weeks with McDavid and Crosby. But seriously, Steele, again, I don't think people are putting nearly enough attention. And I know, no, doesn't need respect on his name. Sidney Crosby is Sidney Crosby. But the 15th player ever to hit 1,500 points, and in the fashion that he's doing it, 33 goals this year, Steele, 58 assists, 91 points, and the Pittsburgh Penguins right there on the cusp, maybe more importantly. I have Sidney Crosby in my keeper dynasty league, so I'm very attached to this player fantasy-wise as well. And I am Mr. Sell High. I can't help but feel, even if this doesn't go well in the postseason, Crosby's still bringing that 80-point value, Steele. I don't know what you think about that take.
He does. And, back in October when we were doing our fantasy draft and I saw Sidney Crosby's name kind of slide a little bit. I forget exactly where he was drafted, but because he was up there in age and you're obviously scared about those injuries, but it is incredible how year after year, even with the injuries that he suffers, if he's out for 20, 25 games, a season, he's still doing a point per game player. He still is a point per game player. So fantasy wise, he is fantastic. You'll love to see it. And again, thank God that he no scary injuries this year. He was able to play almost a full season. He was healthy. He's giving his team right now a chance at making a playoffs, and hopefully we're able to see Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin back in the playoffs again this year. But he's been giving his team the chance all season long, leading the way. Again, and just year after year continues to impress. And you said Crosby is 15th all-time point scorer, right there at number 16, Alex Ovechkin. Those two players go hand in hand right now. And it's just incredible to see what both those players have done over their career.
Yeah, he's the 15th player ever to hit 1,500 points. And just very quickly, the players right on top of him. And, you and I, you're younger than me, but even me, these guys are not in my realm. Paul Coffey, Mark Recchi a little bit for sure, Joe Thornton, Ray Bourque, but Phil Esposito. When you're starting to talk into this conversation, you and I don't need to watch games with Phil Esposito to know that this is now, you're talking about historic record-breaking type performances. And I think that's all you need to know. So we got to show love to McDavid. We got to show love to Crosby. I want to talk about also more historic things coming from this Boston Bruins team, because again, I don't even really want to, but we have to for the listeners out. You know what I'm saying, Steele? Like a Pittsburgh Penguin who is doing what he does, get it. McDavid, I get it. But Bruins, this is now hurting us a little bit here as a semi-Toronto Maple Leafs podcast. But we're going to break it all down for the fans out there, including big-time bets and a little bit more of that playoff race, Steele. That is getting a little bit more interesting on either side of the conference. But again, today's episode was brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy and fun and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NHL60 and use code NHL60 for 60% off plus free shipping. That was one that we had to get out there, Steele. That's my bad. We slacked off the top. That's okay. That's going to get it in there nicely. But also, before we get to the rest of the show and everything that I just teed up, we got to talk about our friends at FanDuel very quickly. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, baby. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB betting action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can step up to the plate for a no-sweat first bet for $1,000 back. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if it doesn't win. And I really like betting on the no-run first inning, the no-hit first inning. That can really get spicy, Steel, but you can also just bet on who hits a dinger, who gets hits, and it's all on FanDuel. Don't miss your chance for that no-sweat first bet for up to $1,000 when you join at FanDuel today. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So make sure you hit the subscribe, hammer the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love, all the support you show us every single day. Let's continue on the topic of historic seasons. The Boston Bruins having a historic season themselves, a record season at that.
Wow.
They are currently tied with the 1996 Detroit Red Wings and the 2019 Tampa Bay Lightning with 62 wins on the season. The Boston Bruins do have 3 games left, though, so they can easily break the record and hold it solo by themselves. So the last 3 games against the Philadelphia Flyers, against the Washington Capitals, against the Montreal Canadiens, I think they can win all 3 games very, very easily. But one of the other highlights as well that they can also break, they're also 3 points away from breaking the all-time points record, which is held by the 1977 Montreal Canadiens at 132 points. So they've got 3 games left. There's 6 points on the line. They're only 3 points back of those Montreal Canadiens in 1997 or 77.
77. Yeah.
77, excuse me. But it's incredible what they've been able to do all season long. Linus Allmark, the Vezina Trophy winner. He hasn't been claimed it yet, but he will be
he's
the
the
Vezina
winner.
Trophy winner.
Yeah.
David Pastrnak continuing to score goals at will.
Good.
Even guys like Hampus Lindholm, who have stepped up in the absence of Charlie McAvoy at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
It is incredible, to say the least, what Boston has been able to do. And again, 3 games left on the season, but only 8 teams that have won the President's Trophy have lifted the Stanley Cup in the same year. Do you think they are able to do that? Because they look like an unstoppable force. I got to bring it up. They look like an unstoppable force, but only 8 teams in all the history of in the National Hockey League have lifted the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup in the same season.
First of all, shout out to you and the stat digging machine that you just produced, because I'm here for all of it. Second of all, the Boston Bruins have all the makings of a Stanley Cup winner. But do I think they win it? No, I don't, Steele. And let me hit you with my question for you, because this is what I had coming on to the show. Which team, and we know the wild card spots are in flux in the East, just like they are in the West, aside from the Kraken. So we could actually see here Pittsburgh Islanders or Florida Panthers, right? It's going to be 2 of those 3 in the East. Which team poses the biggest threat to knocking the Boston Bruins off this historically good run? Do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I think they enter as heavy favorites against all 3 of those teams? Of course I do. But I needed to hear you first tell me which team poses them the biggest threat, Steele, because I think this is a really intriguing question.
Yeah.
Is it Pittsburgh? Is it New York? Or is it Florida?
It is a very intriguing question. And honestly, I would love to see a Boston Bruins Pittsburgh Penguins matchup. Would absolutely love to see it, but I don't think the Penguins are the team that poses the most threat. That's just my honest opinion.
Okay.
I still believe it's the New York Islanders. I think the only thing that holds them back is their offensive ability. Without Matthew Barzal, they're winning games right now, and they're still in this race, and they're keeping it close with Florida and Pittsburgh. I still think they have the best goalie out of all 3 teams. Tristan Jarry has struggled. Tristan Jarry has struggled the last month and a half. He hasn't looked the same.
He has.
Casey DeSmith has not been a great backup, and you can't depend on Sergei Bobrovsky. What happens if they choose to go with Alex Lyon? Is he capable of stepping into this playoff experience for the first time ever and getting the job done?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So for
Okay.
me, I rely heavily on both Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov, obviously Sorokin being the starter.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
love the defense for the New York Islanders. We
Okay.
know that both the Bruins and the Islanders are a stingy, very physical defensive team. It could be a very impactful playoff atmosphere series between the Islanders as well. And you know that they're vicious on both sides. They have guys who like to fight and fight dirty. I would love to see that matchup as well. So I'm going with the New York Islanders, actually.
Yeah, and I appreciate that answer. And we're gonna move on to bets in a few seconds here, but this is where we had to, recap a little bit of where these wild card spots are at, because like I alluded to, Winnipeg, Calgary, Nashville battling out. There's some juicy games on tonight's schedule, including Nashville and Calgary, that I'm going to want to talk about in a few minutes here. So there is one spot up for grabs in that wild card in the West, but this Eastern wild card, that's where I had to go with that question, and I'm with you. Because when it comes to playoffs and being an underdog, you need your goalie to steal you a series if you really want to win it. And my boy Ilya is going to be that guy for the New York Islanders if they manage to get in there, because we can't predict. But I'm with you on what you're saying. And lastly, Steele, oh my goodness, the Boston Bruins have a goal differential of plus 122.
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have found their game as a defensive team this year, and they score with the best of them, and they're only at plus 54. So to answer your question maybe a little further about do I think this Boston Bruins team can lift the cup, I very much think they do, but I think they're also in line for some trouble in that first round, because I think the Islanders do have what it takes to give them a run. And if it is Florida or Pittsburgh, you're just going to be so motivated to knock a team off of this historic run that I need to see it happen first. So that's where I'm at with that. Big time bets coming up.
Big time bets coming up very, very quick. A lot of games on Monday night to start the week. Again, good luck with all your fantasy matchups. If you've won your championship already, congratulations. It's been a heck of a year for everyone in fantasy hockey leagues. We know we've had a great time with everyone who was able to join our league this year in our inaugural season. Remember, pay attention this summer. More details to come for next year's fantasy league. We're going to continue to improve, make it better, bigger payouts, include more participants as well. And again, we appreciate all the love, all the support. So thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate it. Big time bets, though, where the money is made.
Yes, sir.
Flip, it's been a little back and forth for me last little bit. I went on a very strong heater about 2 weeks ago. I think I went like 11 for 12 in the span of a week, or in the span of 5
you were on
days.
fire to start.
I was on fire, and then this last week just hasn't been as great. Still going back and forth, but I'll throw it over to you. You're feeling confident with your picks. You were really talking about them before we hopped on here, so I'm intrigued what your first pick is.
Well, I've been talking about it a lot because we're trying to sweat this Masters money over here, Steele, and we're coming down to the wire, baby. So I'm trying to translate. This is what I need to get off my chest. This can be a very difficult week for betting on the NHL. Because there's just a few spots left where teams have something to play for, and handicapping games where teams on either side don't have anything to play for other than even maybe Connor Bedard potential is so difficult. So I had to try and focus in on a couple of spots that still have playoff implications. And the first one is the New York Islanders taking on the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals, we talked all about it, dusted from the playoffs for the fourth time in Ovechkin's career.
Yeah.
I wanted to just hammer the Islanders, but it didn't make sense to me because maybe the Washington Capitals playing comfortably at home play spoiler. I'm trying to feed some straight winners in this last week, Steele. We need to recoup some of this playoff money. So I went to the numbers a little bit. So why don't we go to the total, something that has been my money all year long. The total has gone under in 5 of the Islanders' last 6 games on the road. It's gone under in 4 of their last 5 overall. And how about more importantly, on the road against Washington, where they find themselves tonight, 6 of the last 7, Steele, gone under the number. I'm going to tease it up to 6.5. I see it at 6. Give me the 6.5. You know I don't like those even numbers. Under the total, 6.5 between the New York Islanders and Washington Capitals. That's my first bet of Monday night.
No, I like you. I like you bumping it up to 6.5, under 6.5. I think under 6 is a little bit dangerous when it comes to the Islanders and Washington.
Thank
I
you.
like the under 6.5, so I will actually put that into a parlay with my picks as well.
Thank
First pick
you.
for me is obvious. I'm going with the Leafs and Panthers at over 6.5. I think that's the very straightforward, basic way to start off any parlay or start off any picks for Monday night. If you look at the last 10 games, majority of them have gone over the number very significantly. Leafs Panthers over 6.5 is my first pick. You were talking about some of those important matchups as well this next
Yes.
week. I'm
Yes.
looking towards that Flames and that Calgary Flames and Nashville Predators game. I've got the Flames on the money line versus the Nashville Predators.
Okay.
I know they're still in it, but the Predators are letting it squeak away from them right now, and the Flames have a little bit more on the line than the Nashville Predators at this
It's
point.
close. Yeah, it's close.
It's close, but I feel like there's a little bit more on the line because of everything that's gone over the past year with the trade, with Goudreau and Kachuk leaving, Huberdeau not performing, Markstrom not performing. A little bit more on the line to give them a little confidence.
I hear that. Yeah, I hear that.
So I'm gonna go with the Flames on the money line versus the Predators, and this feeds into my last pick as well. I'm actually taking the Sharks on the puck line plus 1.5 against the Winnipeg Jets. I did it last time. It banged out for me.
Yeah, I like
Jets, the Jets have been in some very close games recently. 2-0 win over Nashville, 3-1 loss over Calgary, 3-0 loss to the San Jose Sharks. I'm going with the Sharks on the puck line at plus 1.5, but my lock of the night is that Leafs and Panthers over 6.5.
These are just some of these spots, deal. And I had to, like I said off the top, I just, usually I come on here and either agree or disagree with picks. That's just the advice for me all week.
Yeah.
Take all of your bets with a grain of sand. Whereas the first night, 2 nights of the playoffs, I'm going to be coming with some very confident picks for what I expect to see in those situations. Also, all week, this week, Steele and I have, and I'm so hyped up for it, Steele, X factors, playoff series breakdowns, under the radar studs, guys who are going to be the difference makers. We're probably even going to have an NHL awards update heading into this playoffs because we got to break down a little bit of everything. But let me just fire off my second and third picks, including obviously my lock of the night, which comes from that Nashville Calgary game, Steele. And this one's for you to wrap up my last Monday bet on the Minnesota Wild of the year. 8-1-1 this Minnesota Wild team finds itself against the Chicago Blackhawks. 13-7 over their last 20 games, playing very well headed into the playoffs overall. And yeah, they're really good against the Central Division, winning 7 of their last 8. And lastly, they have won 8 straight games against this Chicago Blackhawks team. And I'm not settling for the money line tonight because I think the Wild, with now Kaprizov back in the fold, he's back in the fold. If you can confirm for me, please, Mr.
Yes, sir. He should be back into the lineup.
I think so too. So give me the Minnesota Wild on the puck line to just destroy the Chicago Blackhawks tonight. Not exactly a bold take. Nashville into Calgary. This is the most pivotal game of the season for both teams, and that means under. That means under. That's just how I'm looking at it. Yes, I know both teams have had their struggles defending the cage, but they've also clearly had them putting in the opponent's cage. So give me the under between the Nashville Predators and the Calgary Flames, and I'm teasing that one up as well. And I think the last game between these two that I watched, Steele, let me just check this very quickly. Yeah, 2-1. It could have literally been, it felt like 0-0 hockey between these two teams. And the game before under, give me the under 6.5 Nashville Calgary. That's my lock of the night.
I like the under in that game as well, and in that Islanders Capitals game. Those are the picks. Those are the lock of the night. Place your money, make your picks. We appreciate all the love, all the support. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out Game to Game. Every moment, every performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Thank you again so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.